catapult. We have done a lot of work in this space. We've got the digital catapult. We've got these great catapults. So why now? Why do we have to put even more focus on this and create a piece of work like this?
Well, thanks very much, Juergen, and thanks for the invitation to be here. It's a great pleasure, and great to see such a great crowd of people. We are, I think, as previous speakers have said, at an incredible moment of change, and the speed with which technology adoption is taking place globally is almost unprecedented. I think we're all sort of almost blind to the kind of statistics and the data about the degree of data that's being produced. My favorite one is that there's more data produced in the last 5 minutes than in the previous 350 years. That may be a slight exaggeration, but that's the sort of environment in which we're all working. And in order to really maximize the opportunity and take the benefit of what all that data is about, we need those companies and that expertise that's skilled in those areas. And I think the big challenge for us, in the manufacturing space, is that we look around us in the UK and we can see an incredible upsurge of startup businesses, very many of whom are tech companies who are growing and developing incredibly quickly, and very, very few of them are actually focused on manufacturing. They're focused on consumer, they're focused on services, even the B2B pieces that we see, very few of them focused on manufacturing. I think, if we can achieve one thing as a result of this review, it's to try and shift the attention of that huge number of businesses towards what the opportunity in manufacturing is about. And there are lots of challenges in doing that, obviously.
Yeah. And in your digital catapult down on Euston Road there in London, which I've been to many times, there is this ecosystem developing, and not just there, all around, isn't there, in King's Cross? And are you seeing some evidence of that, of companies which may have worked more in consumer spaces to start to look at opportunities to work with manufacturers in this room?
We absolutely are, and I think as we develop facilities and the capabilities to allow people to try things out, that's where you can see the seeds of enthusiasm and interest. So, for example, we set up recently a low-powered wide area network as an experimental network, which now covers most of London, and we're rolling it out to other parts of the country. And we've got about 80 companies that are looking at how to run new services and applications on there, many of which have got Internet of Things applications or environmental measurement applications of one sort or another. So there is interest there, and what's clear is that if you create an environment and a set of facilities which themselves are probably too expensive for people to actually invest in themselves as individual companies, then you can start to attract people in, and then you can start to provide some focus and drive the energy in the direction that we need it in. And I think what we need is that on a much greater scale.
Yeah, indeed, yeah. And Dick, and your thoughts, why this is so important now?
Well, the High Value Manufacturing Catapult, and I'm probably talking to a knowledgeable audience, but we help companies scale up new manufacturing technologies and develop new processes, and we work with thousands of them. So we've got this unique insight in the UK to the forward thinking of many of the UK's bigger companies, and there's no surprise that forward sight has a very rich digital seam to it, and through our work we can see the incredible benefits that technology can bring. So we've had some fantastic productivity improvements, fantastic savings, better right first time. Just some examples that we've got across the other side of the road here at MTC. Factory in a box technology, basically something the size of a shipping container, fully flexible manufacturing facility inside, can make all sorts of things fascinating. We've got VR and AR facilities and capability both here and in Sheffield. You can see how that can bring new information into the workplace to improve productivity at the workbench. It's fantastic. And some automation work that we've done at AMRC, it saved one company £70 million. So if we can get more of this stuff out there, the benefits to the UK economy in terms of productivity improvement, putting more money in people's wallets, Lord Pryor was still here, more money with the Exchequer to be able to fund more things, like we just need to be doing more of it. So why is it important now is we've got some fantastic stuff ready to go, and we need to get it spread out far and wide.
Very, very good. Yeah. So we have got this great stuff going on, and from Siemens, we know that. We engage here, we engage in the digital catapult, and and there are these projects which are driving productivity. Yet when you look at the statistics across the whole country, we're not doing so good. In here, in this report, we've dug out quite a lot of statistics in terms of, that our rate of adoption of these technologies, especially in SME, although it's not only, but it's largely in that sort of SME sector, is really, really very slow when you compare it to Germany that we heard about, when you compare it to Sweden also and other countries. So I mean, let's just talk briefly about a couple of the barriers. So we spent a little bit of time in this review, didn't we, looking at what some of the barriers are. So what are your thoughts on some of those barriers? Again, maybe starting with you, Jeremy.
Well, if you're an SME, there's no question that the way I always put this is it's about trying to change the fan belt while the engine's running. Right, it's extremely hard to do, because what's involved with many of these digital technologies is not just an incremental change. It is a fundamental change to the business model. And that's where the real productivity opportunities lie, is if you can find a way of making the business work in a different way, developing a different relationship between your suppliers and your customers, and using your data in a more effective ways. These things turn the nature of the business model around, and that is a challenge for any business, and it's particularly a challenge for small and medium-sized enterprises where you don't have an R&D budget, or you don't have that innovation team that sits in the heart of the corporation. So I think the reality of what we have to do is both a technical change and a business model change. It's also a cultural change, and perhaps the other biggest barrier in all of this. And I mentioned before about trying to get SMEs to think about, startups to think about this kind of world. But it's also, I think, true the other way around, that we have to understand that when you start to work in a digital space and software drives what you're doing, then iteration and change and a constant permanent state of beta, rather than a fully tested, rock-solid product which is finished, done, and then you can roll it out. The cultural change to something which is more iterative and is more in a process of change on a permanent basis, that's a hard thing for people to get their heads around as well. I think that the interesting question for us, in the UK, is why are we having more difficulty doing this than other countries around the world? I'm not sure if I can answer that question, but I think one thing I can say is that if we can bring together the startup community with so many of the medium-sized companies in manufacturing, I think we've got a tremendous opportunity. And in lots of ways, the ideas we've got in the review are all about how do we make that happen. Yeah, so exactly. Let's hope we can.
Yeah, and we're seeing it, Juergen, it's really polarised. There are those who are really pushing the state of the art. There's some of the fantastic stuff I've described, and I think we have every chance of being up with the best in the world in that respect. So the companies that really get it, they're part practitioners already, and they're pushing the boundaries, and there's a big gap. Then there's there's a bunch of SMEs who really don't understand this at all, and there's a number of barriers that when I talk to them, they say, Dick, I think I need some Industry 4.0, but I don't really know what it is. So there's a big lack of understanding. There's a kind of there's a fear factor, perception it's going to be high cost. The answer is a full turnkey system with a maybe 6 or 7 figure consideration for a small company. They're just paralysed with fear, and also a lack of trusted advice. As with any new thing, there's a lot of snake oil salespeople out there at the moment. So where do you go for decent advice?
Present company excluded, of course.
Absolutely, no. I wasn't looking in any particular direction, but purveyors of snake oil. But there are also some practical ones as well. So we've got slow internet speeds in the UK. There's a fear of cyber security. And also I think if you're an SME, the prospect of being in this connected system with your customer is, I really don't want my customer looking right upstream at all of my processes. because I've got no wriggle room. So there's a definite fear there of embracing the bigger system effects and system benefits that can be bought. So an awful lot of stuff. But I'm really encouraged. What's in here is a recognition that we both need to pursue the state of the art, which is absolutely the right thing, but we need to start cascading even what we know today down the supply chain. So the adoption program I see as a really key anchor point.
Yeah, so let's just go on to talk about that. So we'll talk briefly now about, because we don't have time here to talk about all of the recommendations in here, but I thought maybe we can sort of stick to this point for a little while about ecosystems and especially helping SMEs adopt these digital technologies in a faster way. So maybe we can just chat about that. But I think we will have time just to come out as well. So whilst we're chatting, if there are especially any SMEs in the audience who've got any thoughts on this, I'd be very keen to hear from you. I think we do have a roving mic, don't we, somewhere? We do, yeah. So we'll have that ready if you've got any questions. So we'll come out to you in a minute. But just on that, so in terms of what we're proposing, that national adoption, creating an easier way for SMEs to engage, what does that look like, Dick, and how does it work with this Catapult ecosystem?
Right, well, we're extremely well equipped. 7 centres around the UK, so we've got a lovely geographic spread of the centres, which serendipitously came from the way we were formed. So we've got the ability to better showcase some of these digital tools and techniques and demystify it, basically. Seeing is believing, bringing SMEs in and coming to have a look. And a key part of this is the demonstration platform. Very accessible, easy stuff, but also be able to show off what the high end looks like as well. So in practical terms, the sorts of things that we're looking at now and which will be enhanced by this is real practical stuff for low cost of entry for Industry 4.0 to show that by simply gathering data, even from old machine tools, is a kind of useful thing to do, and you can make productivity improvements from that. So we've got old legacy machine tools. In fact, I was up in Sheffield with my operations, and I had this old capstan lathe which had arrived on a pallet. And I said, what are we doing bringing one of those in? Dick, we're going to equip this with some low-cost sensors. So for less than £1,000, as in £1,000, we're going to equip this machine with some low-cost sensors and demonstrate how an old piece of knackered legacy equipment can make valuable productivity improvements and give basically somebody with a piece of kit like that entry into the fourth industrial revolution, get a feel for it, get started, and get motivated from realizing how you can use data to improve your business. So we're doing stuff right down at that level, and then of course the sort of high-end stuff where we're pushing the boundaries of VR and virtual reality and augmented reality. We've got some fantastic stuff going on, bringing big data into the workplace, so it's very easy for people to understand and articulate it. So the demonstration bit I see as being really important.
Yeah, good. And Jeremy, any thoughts, particularly at the sort of the startup end?
Yeah, well, I think the thing about demonstrations, it is really important. I think the more that people can get a sense hands-on and in person of what's involved and the way that a technology can work in a real-world context and not just in the abstract. I think it's about demystification to some extent. But I think it's also about trying to create, in these demonstrators, environments in which different people can come together and collaborate. There isn't a silver bullet here. It's, part of the reason why this is so challenging is because there isn't one thing that you need to do. There's lots of different routes through, and some of those things we understand and some of them we don't. And I think both the opportunity to try and put people in a space together where, for the time being at least, the competition has gone out the window, and what you look at is how can we all work together to actually improve things, and what can we learn together is a huge way of moving things forward. And I think at the same time, the challenges of simply educating people and letting people find their own way of understanding, well, where can I get the most productivity boost the quickest is really important. So we're looking at some other methods of evaluating companies' digital readiness as part of all of this, so that actually you can sort of do a bit of self-diagnosis fairly quickly.
Yeah, the collaboration bit's really important because things like additive manufacturing, There's a perception that these tools are very easy to use. You suddenly design something, suddenly it appears on a machine. There's an awful lot to it. Powder characterization. You might be able to produce two parts that look the same, but the physical properties are different. So it's going to need a lot of collaborative work to get that mastered.
Yeah.
And great opportunities through this review and what it talks about, and the physical capabilities that we've got in the centres here.
Great. Any thoughts from the audience at all? Is there any? There's one question up there. We're going to make you walk right up and down these stairs. This is part of the keeping fit. You can just say your name and company quickly.
William Bridgman from Warren Services. I think the piece around people being inspired. Lena came to Warren Services and spoke about digital manufacturing at one of her roundtable events a few months ago. And from that inspiration, we as a business we're a 100-strong, small family engineering business. We've started a digital part of the business. So, a completely different part of our industry. We were interested in that sector, but Lena came, told us about the work at the MTC. We came to the MTC, we thought, yeah, we are going in the right direction here. Everyone else sees this as well, and we've launched a completely new business in the digital space.
Fantastic. Great.
Fantastic.
Brilliant.
Congratulations.
Yay.
Good, thank you. Any other thoughts from anybody? One question.
Hi there, Andrew Aitken from Lanner Group. Quick question. Eva earlier was mentioning the difference between effectively introducing new technologies in the fourth industrial revolution and the third revolution, and many people in the SME sector have not mastered that yet. It seems to me that there's a massive untapped potential, not in necessarily finding a new toy and showing how shiny it is, but also getting basic control of operations, performance and productivity. In my words, put the dog on the lead before you teach it some new tricks. And I think it's really quite important to get some good practice standards and support for the SME sector in that way to provide the platform for good practices with 4.0 technologies in the next generation. Otherwise you end up with islands of excellence instead of the islands of automation we had in the 90s.
Yeah, and I couldn't agree more. And I said, the review calls for advancement of the state of the art, pushing the UK right to the edge of the boundaries of performance, but starting to cascade just what we know today.
Absolutely.
If we could just get down what we know today, is current practice down into the supply chain. So this whole I've lost my brain's gone dead. The national plan? Adoption plan. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, so the whole adoption program that's in there is all about doing that. Yeah. And there's little point in somebody entering the fourth industrial revolution if you're not measuring anything.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So
I think
people to that point.
I think there's that, and the second thing I would say is that if you can customize and tailor the technologies in a way that's easily digestible for specific business problems in specific industries, it then makes it far more digestible for SMEs that find this wall of technology and tech and the language that goes with the vendor hype cycle a little bit formidable.
But I think the thing that's interesting about many of the digital technologies that we see are very cross-applicable. So, something that works in one sector or in one business can work, without a lot of change in another space. And so, it really does depend on the nature of the individual company as to whether it's an incremental piece of data gathering of the kind that Dick was describing by putting sensors on an old piece of equipment, or whether actually there's a really great database of consumer data that's being gathered by the business and not being exploited at all, out of which all kinds of value could be extracted by developing a new service. So it really does depend on the individual circumstances.
Yeah, totally agree. So time for one more, maybe. Is there one more question from the audience? The one right.
There's one at the back, right?
Okay, we'll take this
Really
one
making him run today.
down here. I'm sure we'll manage to come to you during the next panel.
Hello, my name's Luke from a company in Liverpool called Brainboxes. We're a SME, we're an electronics manufacturer. And one of the questions you posed was, why is the UK behind? And if I look within Liverpool in the region, we've got a number of really good initiatives, each of them trying to push Industry 4. But what I find difficult is that because there are so many different initiatives, it's a shame they don't all come together. And I don't know if it's the same in other regions and other areas, but no one wants to cede their own power to one central place, maybe. So we have the universities with their initiatives, Sensor City, Fab Lab, Maker Spaces, and that's my main gripe. If they all came together, they'd be in a much better position to have a community around them, all trying to further the initiative together.
Perfect point. Who'd like to?
Couldn't agree
Jeremy?
more. I think, you know, obviously it's a mixed economy, and there are people from the private sector, there are some of the publicly funded resources, the universities work, and so on. And a lot of this, I think, could be improved by creating some better user journeys, at least some sense of how does one initiative lead on to the next, what's the relationship between one and the other, and creating some visibility of that. And certainly, you know, within the review, we've tried to develop some ideas about how that might happen. So I think you're absolutely right.
We did, by the way, count that in Cheshire alone there was about 120-something initiatives that were geared towards supporting business. I mean, some of which might, you know, have slightly faded out, and ones coming in new. And the National Adoption Programme, which we are describing in here, and we do want to pilot in the Northwest, by the way, and we have picked up the initiative of LCR 4.0, which is a Liverpool-led initiative, as a bit of best practice. And what we want to try and do is find those nuggets and then see if we can scale them and create those to become sort of standard models that we can then roll out in other regions. And again, I'm sure we'll get back to that discussion a little bit when we talk about models in Germany and Sweden and how it works here. So well, thank you very much for those inputs. And we discussed there one of the key recommendation areas, which is this sort of this more visible, this better organized national adoption program and ecosystem in which SMEs and startups can find themselves working together with academia and large companies to easier be able to adopt, de-risk, play with these new technologies. The other key recommendation is all about skills. And we're going to talk a little bit about that in the next panel. And actually, Phil Smith from Cisco, who was leading that work, is with us here today. So he led the skills work as part of the review, and he'll join the next panel. And the final recommendation here very much touches on the point that you made up there, which is about sort of inspiration and is about leadership. And so there is a recommendation to form a leadership body, a national leadership body. We've called it a Made Smarter Commission as a working title, to create a more joined up, a more ambitious, and an approach across the nation which has more inspiration, and that hopefully can inspire many more people to come on board with as we do more of this work on this fourth industrial revolution. Much more of that in the report. If you haven't yet done so, please pick up a copy, or you can download it on the website is now madesmarter.uk. As simple as that, and that will direct you to the download of that report. Again, I want to thank all of the people who have contributed to that piece of work. I certainly look forward to continuing to work with government in partnership and with many of the businesses in this room to take it forward. It's been great business working on this review. Cisco, Phil Smith, IBM, Rolls-Royce, JLR, and as I said, many small and medium-sized enterprises too. I do want to say one special thank you, because he happens to be here in the room, and that is to Accenture and to the project manager from Accenture, who tirelessly worked on bringing all of this together. You can imagine how many working groups and things we had working on this, and to bring it all together into one coherent picture has taken the work of a magician. And I hope you like the work as much as the leadership team do. And I'd like to say a huge thank you to Graham Malley from Accenture. Just stand up, Graham, and take a round with and please thank my small panel, Jeremy and Dick, for helping introduce the report. Thank you very much.